She knows it's about more than a crown. Welcome to Freedom Alive. The Miss North Florida 2025 pageant winner was stripped of her title, all because she stands for biological truth. Kayleigh Bush was crowned in August 2024 and lost the title after objecting to a false definition of women. Kayleigh joins us on this episode of Freedom Alive to share her story and how God is using her platform for more than she ever imagined. I'm blessed to again be joined by our co-host, Matt Staver from Liberty Counsel. And Matt, it never surprises me how far society has gone regarding denying biological truth. Whether it's males encroaching into women's sports and private spaces like bathrooms and locker rooms, and even women's beauty pageants. The Miss Universe pageant has been allowing men to compete since 2012. A man was the first to compete in the pageant as Miss Spain in 2018, and a man took home the crown in the 2024 Miss Maryland USA pageant. And many of the contestants had no idea he was a male. And there's more of this happening. What an insult and assault on women.
Steve, it's outrageous that a man would compete in a women's competition like this, whether it's Miss America or Miss Universe. And in this particular case, Kayleigh's going to share her story, how she won the crown and then was given a contract that was clearly contrary to reality and contrary to Florida law. We'll talk about some of the details about what she was confronted with after she was crowned Miss North Florida.
It's a remarkable story about an issue that continues unbelievably to rage in our society and culture. We cannot wait to bring it to you, but our Freedom Alert is next, and it's brought to you by Liberty Counsel.
The U.S. Supreme Court rules Tennessee law is not sex-based discrimination. The High Court upheld Tennessee's law protecting children from harmful puberty blockers, hormones, and mutilating surgeries. The High Court rejected a legal challenge from 3 gender-confused teens, their parents, and a doctor who argued that the law violated their equal protection rights and discriminated based on sex. Yet the majority ruled that the Tennessee law restricts questionable medical procedures equally for all minors regardless of their sex. This victory sets a precedent that there is no right to subject children to medical mutilating surgeries and will uphold laws protecting children from this gender ideology in 26 other states. States must protect children from these dangerous drugs and experimental surgeries. Counseling is the best option that helps minors to get the root cause of their struggle.
Up next, Matt's interview with Kayleigh Bush.
I'm honored to have a very special guest and a friend, Kayleigh Bush, and she was crowned Miss North Florida in 2024 for the 2025 year. And you had an amazing journey to get to that point, Kayleigh. I want to talk about your background, how you got to that. And then also we'll talk a little bit later about this contract that you received that tried to make it sound like men could become women, and that's what caused all the controversy. But before we get to that, welcome to Freedom Alive. Tell us a little bit about your background, your story, how you grew up, how you got interested in the pageant competitions.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited. This is such an honor. A little bit about myself. So I am just your typical all-American, small-town daddy's girl. I remember growing up in the hay fields with my dad because he used to haul hay and, you know, jumping on the cows and climbing all over the hay bales. So that's just a little bit about me. How I got involved in pageantry is actually a pretty funny story. I like to say that my mom threw me into one because I will admit that I was not the biggest fan of pageants. You know, my background leading up, I saw them as maybe a little bit silly, just a big dress and lipstick and hairspray. But it was through my experience when my mom threw me into one that I learned that it was so much more than that. And my appreciation for pageantry and certain systems has grown. My respect for them has grown so much.
So it's more than just lipsticks and nice dresses.
Yes, it definitely is so much more than that.
And you have to really be an all-around, rounded person, very talented in a lot of different areas. So you're doing the interview. That can make or break your competition.
Yes.
And then you also have to have some kind of other talent that you demonstrate as well. Yes. And what's your talent?
So my talent for Miss America was dance. I've danced since I was 2 years old, so that was a clear choice for me.
So how old were you when you first entered this pageant?
I was 17 or 18, I believe.
And did you win?
So the first one that my mom threw me into, I was 16, I think, and yes, I did win that one. Keep in mind, I had never watched a pageant, never even watched Miss Congeniality, which, by the way, is a great movie if you haven't watched it. And I went to compete for Miss North Florida whenever I was 18.
So now in Miss North Florida, what do? You do different kinds of interviews. What kind of interviews? And how do you prepare for something like that?
So there's a lot of preparation that goes into it, actually. There's a lot of coaching, a lot of, where you want to take the interview based on your platform. Actually, one of my favorite parts about the Miss America program and organization is that you have to have your platform. And my platform is promoting faith, family, and freedom, which is, inspiring a love of God and country in my generation, because you don't see much of that anymore. And through that, being Young Americans for Freedom president at my high school, I hosted national speaker Yenmi Park. I do a lot of tabling events. We did a 9/11 Never Forget project where we placed 2,997 flags in the ground on display for everyone in the school to see, along with so many other projects. And through that, that crown, that microphone of Miss North Florida would be how I promote my mission and get it out there. That would bring the opportunities to me, if that makes sense.
So now you're in the competition for Miss North Florida. How was it to go through that competition? I mean, most people have never even experienced it, or maybe never even attended. Maybe saw it on TV, but you were right in the midst of it, preparing for it, getting the dress, and then getting prepared for all the competitions that you were going to do in terms of your demonstration of dance and your questions. How did all that happen?
So there's so many different sides to it, like you just said. But to make this a little clearer, let me paint the picture for whenever me and Mom were on the way up there. So a few days before the official pageant, I was the sickest that I have ever been. I was sick as a dog. I had my tonsils were infected, so my face was all swollen, my neck was all swollen. I was barely even recognizable. And Mom loaded me up in the car early the morning of, and I remember just thinking, wow, a pageant is something that's going to be really hard for me to pull off right now, because like I said, there's so much to it. Going into the pageant, it was a little bit of a struggle for us to get there. But when we got there, we had focused on uplifting others and, the whole sisterhood part and having a good time and really just, showing other girls that their beauty doesn't come from a dress. Their beauty comes from who their Heavenly Father created in them.
That's amazing. So you can actually be a witness to the other girls in the competition as well as their families.
Yes.
It sounds like you have a very good relationship with your mom and dad.
Yes. I have an amazing family.
That's amazing. So now you get to the competition. Do you still have the sore throat? Did that go away? So
I was still very sick. You can bet that I had a lot of Advil running through my system, and I was definitely, like I said, not at my 100% capacity. But I remember walking on the stage and, smiling and hoping that my cheeks weren't shaking too bad for everyone to see, and hoping that my face wasn't too swollen and that you could still see my eyes because they had looked so swollen shut. But yeah.
So how long is the competition?
So there are multiple different portions to that my specific system that I competed in, my specific pageant. I went in for a 5-minute interview with a panel of judges. I had my talent portion. I had fun fashion, which is more of kind of an upbeat, kind of modelly, and then I also had my evening gown portion.
And then you get narrowed down, I assume, right? And now you realize that you're in the final selection. How does that make you feel? And then what happened when you actually got the crown?
So completely unexpected. Like I said, not that I had given up the hope of winning the crown, but, like I said, I had put my focus to uplifting others that weekend. And so I wasn't really expecting much, if I'm being honest. And I remember whenever they called my name, just being stunned. I was stopped dead in my tracks, and I couldn't believe it. And it was there was so much joy running through my body at that moment.
And this is the actual crown that you have right here.
Yes,
that you
yes,
were
it
crowned
is.
with on that night. That had to be an amazing experience. I guess, so this was your second competition, is that correct?
This was my second pageant that I had ever competed. Well, this was actually my fifth or sixth pageant that I had competed in.
And then that prepares you to go on to another level, which would be the statewide competition, Miss Florida.
Yes.
And you move now from that to now going to the next competition, which happens later in 2025 when you win this competition. You won this in 2024, so it's for the 2025 year. Mm-hmm. And then you go into the Miss Florida competition. What happened now? Something changed where they gave you a contract that had a new definition that had never been in any previous iteration of an agreement. Mm-hmm. What was that about, and how did you react to it?
So I remember another great weekend was in the works. Me and Mom were on the way up to Jacksonville, where I was crowned Miss North Florida, and I was so excited for a fun photo shoot weekend with my sister queens. I remember the night before going out to get cookies and ice cream afterwards. You can just imagine a big group of us gals, all walking back with cookies and ice cream before our big photo shoot. And so then I remember waking up early the next morning for our photo shoot, and it was at the photo shoot that in the middle of it, they presented us with the newly revised contract. And keep in mind, this was 4 weeks after I was crowned.
So you're crowned Miss North Florida. Mm-hmm. 4 weeks later, now you're going to a photo shoot with other queens.
Yes.
I imagine these are previous winners?
They were all crowned at the same pageant that I was in, but they were all just awarded different titles.
Different titles, okay. So different parts of Florida, or different aspects of the competition.
Yes.
So you're all going there for a photo shoot, and for the first time now, while you're there celebrating for this photo shoot and being prepared for that, you get this new contract mm-hmm. that you never saw before, mm-hmm. and it has something in it that catches your eye.
Yeah, I remember sitting in the corner of the room with Mom, reading over the contract, and me and Mom had researched the Miss America program for over a year prior to. So we just in case, we immediately flipped to page 3, and I just remember, I'll never forget, being absolutely stunned to read the new definition of a woman, which included castrated males.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And this has never been in a contract before in Miss America.
No, yeah.
But it had been something that had occurred in a Miss Universe contest where there, as we mentioned at the very beginning of the program, there had been men that actually competed in the Miss Universe, but not in Miss America. So this is brand new.
Yeah.
And you were the first one to receive a contract like this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Had I known that they were going to allow men to compete, I would have never competed in this system.
So what this contract says, essentially, that is, if you, before the age of 14, go through the hormones and the surgical procedure to have what they say a vaginoplasty, mm-hmm. Then you can compete as a woman, even though you're biologically a male. Mm-hmm. And that's what the actual agreement was, and they wanted you to sign off on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what did you do?
I knew deep down that I couldn't sign it. This is just an abandonment of reality, as you said, and I couldn't be complicit in promoting a lie that, Miss America has been empowering women for over 100 years, and now we've forgotten what a woman is. I mean, it makes no sense. I could not partner with an organization that claims to empower women but doesn't even know what a woman is. And so ultimately, me and Mom went home and thought about it for a little bit, but I knew deep down that I couldn't sign it through all the soul searching and through all of the emotion that I was going through.
Did they allow you to participate in the photo shoot?
Yeah, I remember heading back into the photo shoot and trying to finish out the photo shoot with a smile on my face, but it was pretty hard.
Because you knew what was coming, that you wouldn't be able to sign that. And unless they relented there were going to be consequences, that they would retire your crown or take your crown away.
Yeah.
What an incredible punch in the stomach, if you will, at a time when it would be a celebratory, rejoicing time to get the photo shoot and then see this. You know, the story of Daniel in the three Hebrews in the lion's den, I often think about those three Hebrews when they were told to bow down. They could have actually compromised, and they could have bowed down and cursed the God, you know, that the pagan God. They could have prayed to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as they were bowing down, and make it appear like they were doing what they were supposed to, but still being truthful to their God. But they wouldn't compromise, and it sounds like you were in that very situation where you could have blown it off and signed something that was wrong, but you're in a Miss America pageant that celebrates women, and now they don't even know what a woman is.
Right.
So what happened after that? Obviously, you brought this to their attention. You tried to get some result, and what happened?
Yeah. So immediately, me and Mom got on the phone, and we were already on the phone with the state level director, and immediately raising concern. I had made multiple plea videos and sent them to the organization, and all of them were just disregarded. And I remember multiple attempts, sending letters, sending videos, and finally it came down to a point to where weeks later, after getting no response back from Miss America, they said, okay, Kayleigh, sign it or we're going to retire your title. And so I declined to sign.
And I know you contacted Liberty Counsel, and our attorneys worked with you and sent a demand letter to Miss Florida. But so far, Miss Florida and Miss America has refused to rescind that provision of their contract.
Yes.
So this is in violation of state law, because the state law says that you can't have in fact, it actually says a contract which violates a provision of Florida Constitution or Florida statute is void and illegal and cannot be enforced in the Florida courts. And this particular contract is contrary to Florida law, because Florida law says that a boy can't go through this castration and become a girl. There are several laws that say, you know, a boy is a boy, a girl is a girl, and you can't have puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, or these mutilating, castrating surgeries to make it pretend to be somebody of the opposite sex. So it's very clear in Florida, they have no basis to do what they did.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Miss America should ask themselves, what message are you sending to little boys and little girls? What are these little boys thinking? Are they thinking that they can one day grow up to be Miss America? This is insanity. It's barbaric. And if we lose the very basic of truth that we know, then, you know, America is doomed. We have to get back on the right track. And Miss America definitely is heading down the wrong track.
So, I mean, we have this crown here, an amazing symbol of your competition here. And they allow you to keep it. But your crown title has been retired. And you were willing to give all that up, because as we're taping this program this day, the Miss Florida competition, where you would be a competitor, is taking place.
Yes.
Why are you willing to give all that up?
This crown, this earthly crown, is nothing comparable to the crown that I will receive in heaven, because I could not compromise the truth for a lie that harms children at the end of the day. I have two brothers, and I couldn't imagine them even thinking, not that they would, but I can't imagine them even thinking that they could, you know, change to the opposite sex. Trans regret is real. And minors absolutely should not be making a life-altering, damaging decision that's going to change the rest of their lives before their brain is even fully developed.
And your platform is faith, family, and freedom.
Yes.
I mean, to be contrary to everything you stand for. To have, of all places, a competition, a pageant that is dedicated to women, not know what women is, so a woman is, but also to even suggest to a boy that if you become a eunuch and you get castrated and you take some drugs and hormones, that you can magically become something that you're not. You can become a girl. You can become a woman. That's essentially the policy that Miss America is stating with this agreement here. And I have it right in front of me of what it is that they asked Kayleigh to sign. And not only is it wrong, but it gives the false idea to boys or girls that sign, all your competitors from here on out, if this is not changed, that this is possible when it's absolutely impossible, and it's very destructive.
Yeah. I remember sending those videos and sending the plea letters, and I remember really, really thinking that Miss America would change their contract and stop promoting the harm of children, but so far they've doubled down and refused.
So once you told them that you can't sign this and they refused, what was the next step? Did they send you a letter? Did they just tell you they're going to retire your crown, that you can't appear anymore as Miss North Florida, the competition that you won? How did that happen?
So what happened is they silently and without ceremony took away my crown and made no ruckus about it, and just said that crown has to stay in a box, and you can't wear it or can't use that title or that platform anymore.
Well, I can refer to you as Miss North Florida because that's what you were, and that's what you are, and that's what you represent. But, you know, for you to be, I mean, your story is an incredible story because you've said oftentimes it's more than a crown. It's not just about a crown. It's about something a lot more. And a lot of women in your position would, you know, certainly long to be able to be in that role where they won this crown and they're now onto a bigger competition, Miss Florida, and then eventually winning that onto Miss America, the entire nation, which you likely would have had an opportunity to do. I mean, you are an amazing competitor, but you were willing to give all that up for truth. And I think that resonates down through history. The crown is temporary, as you said, but your stand, I think, will echo through history.
Yeah, and to all of those girls out there that place their value in a crown, you're worth so much more than that. And, you know, I think that your value comes from your Heavenly Father, and it comes from who you really are, and never compromise the truth. Always stand up for what you believe in and be bold. Yes.
What would you like to share with some of our viewers? Maybe someone who's in your shoes that is competing in pageants or starting to compete, parents, for example. What kind of advice would you give them?
Advice, this is something I've always stood on, is never compromise the truth for a lie. And no matter if you feel like you have the platform to speak the truth or not, always speak the truth boldly and stand up for what you believe in, no matter what you feel the outcome will be. Whether or not you're going to make a difference that you feel, you're always going to make a difference. And like I said, speak the truth boldly. In America, we are honored to, we have the basic right of freedom of expression and freedom of, your voice, and use that voice to stand up for your truth, to stand up for truth, and to stand up for what you believe in.
Now, your convictions came from somewhere, and I know obviously those were instilled into you by your mom and dad, your family, but at some point in time you had to make those your own. What is it that makes Kayleigh tick?
It's actually funny that you say that, because I have a verse weighing on my heart. Matthew 18:6, I believe it is. Whoever causes one of these little ones to stumble, it would be better for them to have a millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. And it makes my heart break, because that's what Miss America is doing. They're causing these little children to stumble, and the consequence of that will be great. But it's heartbreaking, because God's children are God's children. They're precious, and my heart breaks for those that fall and believe the lie that a boy can become a girl and a girl can become a boy, because it's absolutely not true.
Well, the lie, for parents and others that have someone in your life, maybe it's your own child or a grandchild, or somebody else who's going through maybe gender confusion, they having some questions as to who they are. They may be struggling with unwanted desires, same-sex desires, or other kinds of issues that they're struggling with. Don't buy the lie that some of these counselors or others want to give you, that the magic pill is, oh, you just were born in the wrong body. We can change that by drugs and hormones and surgery. Those children are being damaged because the underlying issue, whether it's anxiety or body image or other kinds of issues that they're dealing with, are not being addressed. Mm-hmm. And instead, they're being led down this path that will not fix those issues, but will in fact make them worse and compound them. So reach out to those in your area. If you're in, call us, Liberty Counsel. We can put you in touch with counselors and others, and people like yourself that can give counsel and guidance and encouragement, because this is a big lie that's being perpetuated on our children. And I just want to thank you for your courage, willing to give up this crown for a greater crown. And your crown in heaven is going to be, this will be minor compared to your crown that you'll have in heaven. So thank you, Kayleigh, for your faith. It's obviously apparent, and your deep conviction and love for the Lord. Any final words you want to leave us with?
I just want to thank you so much for this amazing opportunity and the work that Mr. Staver and your team at Liberty Counsel has done has changed my life so much for the better, and I'm so forever grateful.
Matt, all the chaos and the confusion, isn't the real issue behind this really an attack on God?
Well, it is an attack on God. It's God created us in his image. And essentially what this ideology says is that you can create yourself in your own image, and you can be male or female, both, neither, a combination of whatever. And you can be your own creator. And that is a direct attack on God. And obviously it's an attack on women as well. And to think that Miss America, of all places, Miss America, I mean, in the title, Miss America now suggests that as a biological reality, you can go through plastic surgery and as a male be castrated and then magically become a female. It's preposterous. I mean, it's a flat out lie. It's dangerous. And as Kayleigh says, she talked about it's better to have a millstone hung around your neck than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. And this is a huge attack on God's children, his little ones.
Every episode of Freedom Alive, it's our privilege to be able to bring you the truth and to talk about it from so many different examples and so many perspectives. This is just an amazing story of courage and strength and standing up when the enemy really does prowl like a lion, that God tells us to be courageous and be strong. In closing, remember Genesis 1, verse 27, which says, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them." Our freedom is a gift from our Creator. We must never forget that and always protect it. Join us here next time. You'll hear victories as well as ways you can stand up for your priceless freedom. Join us again for Freedom Alive.